All right, everybody, it's time for another one of these perspective videos. Set up at my house here, so I had to rig up some way to get my phone up there to record this, but today we're going to be learning about 3-point perspective. I also didn't have a ruler, rigged one up by getting a straight edge and just cutting it. I put a piece of mat board. Any piece of cardboard will really work as long as it's a thinner piece, like on the back of a notebook. As long as it's got a straight edge, that's all you need because we don't need to measure anything. Just like 2-point, we're going to start with a horizon line, but instead of going across the center of the page, we're going to keep this one a little bit lower. We're going to have 1, 2, 3 vanishing points, one up above, which is what makes 3-point different than 2-point. I'm going to label these alpha, beta, and gamma because why not? Now with 3-point perspective, you also have these other kind of funky horizons, which I'm going to lightly draw in with a dashed line in between the points because these kind of affect how your forms look. Once you go beyond these dashed lines, things can get a little tricky. So for this first video, we're going to try to stay inside the dashed lines for the initial part. Now, the difference here between 2-point, where you're looking at an object straight on at like the corner and the two sides are going back, here it's like we're looking up at something that is very tall. So to start our drawing, I always like to start with 3 lines coming out of that beta point at the top. So I'm going to make these 3 lines coming all the way down below the horizon and staying inside those dashed lines. All right. Now these are going to form the 2 back edges of our object and the front corner we're looking at. Now, somewhere along that center line, when I teach my students, and if you are one of my students watching this, I suggest making a small dot on the center line there and putting one at that very bottom of the line. These are going to help us as we go to our alpha and gamma points. So just like with 2-point, we're going to line up and put in our lines. We're going to do it on both sides here. Now this can be kind of confusing because we have a lot of lines going on right away, and we also have a lot to erase. But if you just go slow and you think about what you're doing, it shouldn't be a problem. So what I've created here in this central portion is a large towering object. To help you see that, you should start by erasing the horizon line directly behind it, and it'll make this thing look much more solidified because we can't see through it now. We can't see that horizon line. Then we need to erase any excess from our sidelines that were there because we just kind of drew them in. So there we go, erase that top center line too. And now you can really kind of see the central towering, rectangular prism type form. We also have to get rid of these extra sidelines that we don't need. All right. Now, if I was just cruising on this, I wouldn't have even drawn those all the way to the point. I would have just had my ruler, my makeshift ruler lined up, and I would have stopped right when I got to that other line. Same at the top. And that's actually how I will create a second object. Now I could go above, I could go below. I'm going to go over here towards the alpha point, and I'm again going to start with 3 lines. Now these are going to be much closer together, and this object is going to look a lot thinner than the initial object I created. There are my 3 lines out. Pick a point on the top, point on the bottom line. Now this time I'm still going to line up with my alpha and gamma vanishing points, but I'm not going to draw all the way out because I don't want to erase that much. So at the bottom here, lined up that point. At the top, lining up my next point. Coming across here to gamma. bottom edge there, top edge over here. And now I've created a whole another towering object. I can again erase my horizon line from behind it, make it look more solid. Across the top here, get rid of all these extra lines. And boom, whole nother towering block. I can do the same thing over here on my gamma side, but maybe this time I make it a little shorter. So still coming from my beta point, making my 3 lines. And I encourage you in the beginning to always draw those lines all the way from your beta point. All right, there's my 3. I'm gonna make this guy shorter. Put a dot here, dot down here. This side, line up with gamma. This side, gamma. Over here with alpha. Sometimes it's easier to turn the paper instead of the ruler. Got myself back to like my home base here. Erasing the extras. And that quickly, I've created kind of a series of objects that have a idea of towering height to them. Now, all of these objects are crossing the horizon. They're starting below the horizon and going up above. What if we have an object above the horizon where we can see the bottom of it? Well, I'm gonna show you how to do that now. If I look at this object here and I line up again using my beta vanishing point at the top, and I make my center line like that. Same thing here, the one on the side, and then back here, this far one. I have these 3 lines. Still using that idea of the points. We'll put those in and we'll see what happens when we line up. Right here, this line was not long enough to get down to my bottom corner. So I have to adjust, draw it a little longer, erase that top one. So it's like I've created the side. Over here, going over to alpha, put this side on. Now, here's where that other step, that is from some of the 2-point perspective videos I did, where we have to put the bottom on this object, because right now we just have the 2 sides, but since we're looking up, we're gonna see the bottom. The way to do that is you gotta reverse which vanishing points you're going to. So here, this corner, it's already lined up that way, so I gotta come back this way towards my gamma point and put in a line. From this corner, I have to come across to my alpha point and put in the bottom line there. And you can see now how that object looks like it's floating up above this one. Magical.